Hey guys, Ben Arnett here, president co-founder of Fohse, and we are wrapping up season 3 of our podcast today, and it's actually on 420 as well, so a little celebration at the end here. We're actually bringing back two guests from season 1. We've got Brandon Rust with Bukashi Earthworks, and we've got Mr. John Bays with Green Bodie Genetics. So we're going to kind of talk to them about their experiences with Fohse, the team, the technology, since we last had a sit down, and go into what they see happening next in the industry, some of their fun stories they've had since our last sit down. And John was kind enough to bring in a plethora of organic weed for us to sample and try. So we'll see how long we can go and who lasts the longest here in a little bit. But yeah, let's start out, John. What's new? What's the latest and greatest with the breeding program and Fohse, and any fun stories with the tech?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been really nice because, been doing it for a little while, so we've had a little bit of experience with lighting, tech, different aspects of breeding, and, we're really happy about what we're seeing with the seed production. That's one thing I noticed, seed maturity, seed production's increased, so, we can all say, oh, it must have been because of me, I'm doing something more special, but it seemed to be happening right in coincidence with the light. So, that it's been really obvious. The seed production of mature seeds been really, I don't know, increased by 5-10%. Like it's like obvious the difference, So really, that's a huge advantage, obviously, for seed producers. And if you're looking at it in that kind of context, why is that happening? From all the balance of the spectrum, all the diversity of the spectrum capacities that you guys offer, and really just offering the plant what it needs to produce and be healthy and be happy and be in that balance. It just seems, I don't know, it's kind of making it a little bit effortless for us now. So it's really nice to be able to do that indoor and see a similar production that we're seeing with natural sunlight, but happening inside is pretty sick.
Oh yeah, and I know that it's actually funny. We just had Mr. Soul on Brothers Grimm Seeds, and he was saying the same thing. And he was like, "Yeah, right out the gate, we noticed. Once we dialed in, they went from HPS. You'd obviously already had a ton of experience with LED, so there was no absolutely zero learning curve on your end. But once he kind of figured out, turn up the temperature a little bit, played with the DHU, increase feeding, all that good stuff. He said the same thing. He's like, seed production went through the roof. Quality of seed went through the roof, and the number of actual usable seeds to sell went through the roof. Like you said, the maturity of seeds. So he's like, it's a noticeable difference, which is exciting to hear. Multiple people say that. So
I mean, you can see down here, I bought a bunch of seeds, some bulk seed too, just to show that hasn't been cleaned fully yet. So I mean, that's just like straight out the plant, how it looks. No white seed divided really. So there's, you can see the range there, and I mean, I don't know, maybe 2 to 5% max, not fully mature seed. And I don't know, I was probably getting maybe 10 or 15% immature seed before, but I mean, could have been my technique and everything too. But
it's light.
It's I mean, here we are,
That's awesome.
So it's pretty sick, and to be able to. And so one thing I'm also potentially contributing it to, as we know, and with the LED, with the way that enhances bract production and structure, it seems like there's more. There's a little bit more pistil production, or stigma production stuff, so you can really, have more opportunity to create seed, because I mean each hair, each bract, that's gonna create a seed. So you get pollen to that fiber. I mean, if you look at it's really interesting if you look at the stigma, because it's basically, we see it just as like a hair, but when you look at it closely, it just looks like a bunch of open glass tubes, kind of like waiting to catch, like all the way down. So this genetic code that's dropping in there and going in. But so when you have more opportunities, obviously more seed production.
Yeah.
And so that's, another thing. So that plant health and the overall plant health that we're noticing, if you're able to work with it well, so really what we're noticing is that, it's been a year and a half now that we've been rocking the lights, a little longer, and
did you get a increase on pollen from your males?
I mean, it seems like, I don't know, you've seen some of the videos, they're like, so they're, I mean, like,
That's really, a good question.
It's really like everything is in this exacerbated production, so It's really been, if you're able to dial that in and give the extra 20 to 30% nutrient, and with organic it's a little harder because you got to titrate that in. It's not like you can be like, okay, here you guys go, you guys ready to rock. It's like, it's gotta, especially if you know what you're doing and you want to get it in perfect and you want it to hit at the right times. It's, if you know that and you can dial it in with this light, the production's really obvious. So we're seeing it in the flower, we're seeing it in the seed, and just seeing it really, the overall balance and health of the plant. Instead of back in the day with the HPS double-ended, is kind of a little more stress farming in my opinion. You're pushing a plant in a different way, your crop steering in a different way through stress, versus now it's a different type of technique. You can't really, I used to be able to force finish a plant within 48 hours. If I'm like, oh, I need to cut 10 days off this flowering time here, let me just strip all the leaves, dry it out a little bit, run a 24-hour light, 12-hour dark, 24-hour light, 12-hour dark, boom, they're done. And that's not something I can do with the LED, but the balance of the plant throughout, I don't really have to do that as much. So there's just some certain things that are, like I said, you're not stress farming anymore. You're more creating a balance and then letting the plant do what it needs to do in the time it needs to do it. But obviously guiding that through spectrum is really easy. So if you're going to run things later with the spring spectrum, you're going to, things change a little bit. You're going to start your, autumn spectrum sooner. You can really dial in these kind of crop steer or whatever they call it now, just through that, wattage. But as you know, with LED, if you pump it too hard, shit starts blowing out, everything starts, like, I don't really know exactly the science behind that, but we all notice it, that, okay, even if you have all the nutrient, but the plant wasn't ready to go to 80% or even 50% with the light, you see it within a day, you're like, oh shit, what the fuck's going on here, then you're like instantly dialing it back. And a lot of people won't perceive that. They'll see this, oh, it's starting to pop off, here we go, and next thing you know, you ruined your fucking crop, because you thought 100% on the light was,
there's an
slowly increase,
right? There's an aspect to the use and sufficiency. So sometimes when you switch over to, and you're trying to, let's say you're running full blast, there's a better efficiency. And that's one of the things that I really notice about the things is, if you're not running higher photosynthetic nutrients and that right kind of PPFD levels for the right period in that plant stage, you can mess with things there.
For sure. Yeah, 100%. And that was one thing. We built the technology. It wasn't meant to be ran at 100% all the time. It was meant to be hung high to maximize uniformity, and then use a controller to dial it in. It wasn't about. Some growers are just hell bent on using 100% of their equipment, which in my mind never makes sense, because it's like running your car at 6,000 RPMs everywhere you go. It's like being stuck in first gear.
That is how you drive, though.
Yeah, I do like driving fast. But I'm like, that doesn't make sense. The longevity of the equipment goes down and a bunch of other things. And again, if you're using 100% of your light at week 1, that's not the right amount of light at week 8. Like you said, the whole idea behind this equipment was the right amount of light at any specific stage of growth, with the ability on some of our fixtures to change spectrums for, pulling different photomorphogenic responses out, whether it be a color or you're stretching too hard, you got to squat it back down, just enough to make sure the plant's affected, but not enough to let a grower completely fuck it up, right? So,
and it's making light not be your limiting factor, right?
Yeah.
If you never hit 100, at least you have that balance. Some cultivars will only take 50% of the light. Yeah. Some will take 60 or 70, right? There's nuance between what you're growing, how you're growing it.
Different varieties will react different. They'll have different DLIs. So the amount of light that they'll actually need to receive over a specific period can vary between lots of, cultivars.
And it's finding that light saturation point for that cultivar, right?
Yeah.
For sure. And I'm sure what you do as far as plant sap analysis, all the tests that you do help you kind of really see into the plant and see how it's uptaking nutrients and where that balance is too, right?
Yeah, well, from a data standpoint, if you're, having a control for everything. So, hey, here's my base target. Here's where I want things to be at this certain point. It's really good for a sufficiency point that I'm never having to run things at 100%, and that's because I get I get more life out of that light, right? And then also what's great about it is the uniformity, because if we're, filling up a certain space and we expect to get X amount of weight off of this, being able to have uniformity amongst canopies, because I've used a bunch of different LED lights, and if you were to go in there and build out a whole room and then go take readings underneath these things, a lot of them can have drastic fluctuations, and that's one of the things that I really liked about this product. It's one of the reasons why we're loading up the new facility in Oklahoma with them, because when we're doing our beds and we have that 4-foot area and we want every single thing to be even across the canopy, it's really important, and that's one of the things that I really liked about this. But you can, using this data is really interesting too, because you can set all your parameters and your SOPs based off of the data that's been collected, and if you do something different, you can physically see it. You can see it in the numbers, So for instance, we briefly talked about cultivar specific SOPs, like how to build a nutrient regimen. And for me, what I have is a target baseline where I use Logan Labs. They have the best data sets, and you have 3 different things that I get from there, which is a standard soil test, a saturated paste test, and tissue analysis. And a soil test, it'll tell you the overall amount of everything that's in your soil. And then what a saturated paste test does is it shows you what falls into solution. So if you were to saturate your soil, all of the things that are being exchanged and degraded from bacteria, all the organic matter, they fall into solution as ions, the elements that the plant needs, whether it's calcium, magnesium, sulfur, phosphorus, all your micronutrients, everything, right? And that data, you can see the ppm of each of those individual nutrients, and you can make adjustments to your soil based off of what you're seeing. And so with that data, you can also correlate what is happening, as if you know that X amount of calcium is falling into solution according to your saturated paste, and then you're looking at your tissue and you have, X amount of calcium and your target is X, and you're meeting that target by the amount that's falling into solution, that's the range. So if I'm shooting for 5.5% calcium in my leaf tissue, and my target ppm on saturated paste is 200, and I'm hitting that 200 and I'm reaching that goal on my tissue, I know that's where that variety needs to be. And then you guys had Scott on here from New Age Labs.
Yep.
You can even take that data, that set of 3 data, of 3 pieces of data, and then you can also do some correlations with the SAP analysis. Now, SAP analysis is a little different from tissue analysis, because tissue analysis gives you an overall profile of the plant. You're taking, fully photosynthetic leaves from all over parts of the plant. SAP, it's 2 different tests. You're taking lowers and higher, and so you get the amount of nutrients in each part of the plant. And if you see that nitrogen is lower in one part of the plant, and it shows that on the sap, that it's going to become deficient, and so you can kind of preemptively act, and then you can add it into your regimen. Okay, so according to all this data, let's say death breath, which was a test that I did, a variety that I made and stuff, and I did a full test panel on this thing, and it showed me that it needed less nitrogen, it needed less calcium, it needed more phosphorus, according to all the data. So when I have all this data and I have this over the set of the course of a cultivation cycle, what I can do is I can adjust the original targets that I'm setting for my saturated paste, what I want to fall into solution, based off that. So if iron is a little deficient, which it was at one point, I can add in a certain amount of iron. I can track that, say, okay, this is what this did, this is how much it brought in, and now I'm no longer deficient. And so it works really interestingly, where you can correlate all these data sets. And this is, how most of the science has been done with, corn crops and soybean crops and all these other, agronomic crops that exist, and they've all been done at university level. However, because of, the legality federally around cannabis, there hasn't been a lot of university studies, and there has been some that have come out. I've looked at a lot of them, and they're still in the very beginning stages of like being able to like do this type of thing to build these things out, because they're still trying to find out, what's the right ppm of nitrogen, what's the right ppm of phosphorus, what happens when we do not enough nitrogen and too much magnesium, and they're still trying to look at that. And for what I like to do is I just kind of take the approach that conventional agriculture takes, is just to look at what's in the soil and then just add based off of the targets that we built.
Yeah, I know that's exactly what I know when Cantwell was using our systems. He had to do a ton of testing on not only, and again, it's something that only organic guys run into. You have to start doing testing on your soil and obviously your plants, because your top dressing or feeding of your soil is it's like a 2-part system where you got to feed your soil, which feeds your plants. Because if you start, like, he blew his yields out like 50%, so his soil started getting rocked compared to his past years. So then he had to start actually figuring out how to feed his soil. So again, it's a pretty in-depth process, but
takes a little bit more time.
It's not for everyone, for sure.
The good thing too is, like, when you have everything dialed in and you have good good environmental parameters, and you have your air handling units that rock out, and all the lights are working and they're all even and everything's how it should be, right? When you have all your soil on point, when everything is collectively dialed, man, you can really get great results repeatedly over and over and over again. And that's the thing. You have to have that consistency. And like I said before, I've dealt with a lot of different LEDs, and that's not one of the things that you'll see. And one of the things too is that I like is that when you tune down, because I have different like ramping schedules, for the lights, mm-hmm. right? And so I have different PPFDs for different periods, and then it it ramps up and then it ramps a little bit down.
Yep.
Now, I don't lose spectrum. I don't lose the spectrum by tuning it down. And that's one of the things that I've seen before, where if you tune something down, you lose a lot of the spectrum and the ability to still have a good penetration.
Yep.
So that is, for me, a big part of it. Also the customer service over here is great. You guys built like a really great like business. I'm actually really stoked, dude, because being able to come places like this, talk with my friends and smoke and chill. I mean, this is like being able to have this and facilitate this, get out information, talk about why people like me and him are advocating for the products that you guys are providing and the services that you guys are providing. It's a great asset for people who are setting things up, because it allows not only just the product but the networking that goes with it, with all the individuals, with the sales team, because they're networked with people like us and other people that can help with all these other things that go in with not just the lights but the whole process.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something that we always tell people is, like, first and foremost, we're an engineering firm, but we're an engineering firm that came from our frustrations with our, commercial cultivation that Brett Stevens and I were involved in 10 years ago, right? We're using HPSs in the desert. We're freezing over HVAC lines, burning GGS table. You're like, started testing LEDs. We're having some dude running around raising 300 lights a day. And you're like, that's not feasible. Losing crop while you're doing it. And it's like, there had to be some changes. And that's when a buddy of mine, the, rocket engineer, micro LED technology and pacemakers, heart defibrillators, reached out with what's now our S3E8 design. And as soon as we saw what it did, plants went sideways, got big. I mean, just stomped our HPSs, and then other growers in town did and started making orders. We're like, all right, maybe there's something here. So obviously first designed all the technology around all of the stuff we were frustrated with. Raising and lowering lights, like same level light. We want multi-spectrums for when we drop in from veg, from, through stretch and finished flower. Like, why has no one done this? That's because everything was built for tomatoes, leafy greens, and they just always said this will grow cannabis.
Yeah.
But then second was the customer service side. Once we got into the weeds, if you will, pun intended, of the lighting side, we found out that no one's growing with this much light, and not everyone knows how to. So then we started bringing on guys like Mike and other plant physiologists, the guys at Lycor. I mean, we did a lot of research to make sure that we were teaching and educating people appropriately on how to use the technology. And for the most part, it was pretty quick, but there's always probably 90% of guys got it, but there's always that 10% that just grow off of their equipment and their temperature. They don't touch it. They don't do this. They don't look at the plant. They just look at their equipment and go, I always did it this, 76 degrees. I'm like, no, we got to go to 84, and they basically faint because they're like, that'll destroy the plants. I'm like, it won't, I promise.
Yeah, we came from a point in the industry where I think light was a limiting factor for a lot of these operations, maybe not even knowing, right?
Yeah.
And now transitioning over where we were talking about before, to even get it to 100% sometimes is hard, right?
Well, I mean,
so now light
don't even look
because I don't.
Some
I
guys
run
do.
my lights at 100.
No, I don't
some
either.
guys run at 100. They're at like 2200 ppfd. They're feeding 12 times a day. Like
above the.
they're like 4 or 5
they're
4
probably
feet above the can.
Yeah,
feed.
they're
that's a tight footprint.
mega
though.
salt.
Mega salt. Yeah.
Just to see what the plant can handle too, though, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, now that light's not your limiting factor, right? It's establishing what that limiting factor is throughout all those other cultivations, and it could be different through every cultivation, through different methodologies.
Cultivars,
as a
everything.
as a light provider, now we're not even looking at light as the issue. We're trying to figure out other things in the grow that could be the issue to then adapt to those parameters that the light is putting out, right?
Well, that's the beauty now too, is like with all the science and everything through all the agronomy aspects that are kind of influencing cannabis now, because a lot of us have been, I mean, for myself, I saw what was happening years ago. So you have to create SOPs that work with high level ag products, and there's a plethora of amazing organic products that you can get in tote, tonnage, whatever size that's really cost effective, and be able to utilize all those materials and those techniques that have been used in viticulture and all these other realms really advanced. And now with all the science of the paste and the sap analysis and all these different things, like myself, this is all intuitional. What he's doing with numbers and everything, I'm doing by feel and what the plant's telling me, but to be able to register that all, and for us to that's why we've been talking a lot, starting to work together, and he's created some amazing nutrients and some organic pelletized stuff, because we've been working with a different company. We decided to kind of move this direction, see if Brandon can make some stuff that works for our SOPs, so we can start to work together, because what he's doing is something really special, I feel, for the industry, for cannabis, and to be able to meld minds of different levels of intuitional aspects of life commitment relationships to the plant from both sides, but to have a scientific view and a esoteric view, and to be able to mash that together can really offer something to the industry that's really full spectrum.
It's that balance. So I think the crossover is here between big ag and now guys who go about it kind of like you're saying you go about it too, right? And finding that balance between both of those is nice, because before, I mean, black market guys aren't sending in samples for tissue sap analysis, right? Yeah. Not much, right? That was sketchy as shit.
Dude, I remember even working with Oregon State. They're coming there before, in whatever 2014 or so, when we just started seeing this dudding.
Blindfolding them, bringing them in, right?
No, they're like, I'm like, okay, this is chill. This is cool, right? They're like, no, you're medical, right? Yeah, 100% it's chill,
And you'd be really surprised, because your intuition would probably be correct. Because if you were to map out what you're doing, you'd probably be like, oh yeah, this, I would, if I were to look at it, be like, yep, that makes sense. There'd probably be a lot of similarities in what those targets look like, for what you're doing. Because you're probably, a perfect example of this is I went up to Mendocino to Mendo Dope Boys farm, and they did the whole thing with Logan Labs. They did standard soil, saturated paste, and tissue. And when we went up there and we were looking at it, all of their stuff, they were right in those target ranges. They were in those target ranges that
and they grow really good outdoor, no?
Yeah.
They grow indoor too?
It was outdoor.
But they're outdoor crushes, yeah?
Yeah. And So it was really interesting to see that, because even without, prior knowledge or testing, just having the intuitive experience and understanding that plant, they're really coming within those targets. They're falling dead on them.
Well, there's not too many other plants in the. I mean, there are a lot of plants in the world that do this. Don't get me wrong, but in agriculture, there's not too many plants that you can, and we all feel it, have an esoteric bond relationship with, that something behind the curtains happening for all of us in our own way, whatever that means or looks like. But there's something special about this plant that we're all connecting with a way, and the people that have really given their life to that and really utilizing that relationship to create a medicine to help and create less suffering and to really help this biome, that we're living in right now, it's that relation, at least to me, opens up this kind of perspective that's very unique, So to be able to register all that scientifically and to be able to utilize all the aspects now, from all our intuitional capacity, from all our scientific capacity, from all the technical capacity of what we're doing to, analyze it all, it's like, shit's going to start going really fast. But what we're going to see too is, when you're at optimum plant health, it's not like, at least from what I've noticed, you can't get much better when it's, when it's an optimal plant health and optimal soil health and optimal biome, and then it's on your equipment. Then it goes really to the lights.
Yeah.
And then once you start understanding that relationship and speed and titration and prediction and all that, and you can do it with all the analytic perspective.
Kind of what we were hitting on before is obviously getting you two guys together, and Fohse offers a lot more than just lights.
Yeah.
Because we've had our clients, like you said, all of our sales guys lean on you. They call you for walkthroughs, or can you talk to this guy, help him out?
I call John and ask him to talk to the plants for me sometimes.
I mean, there are so many growers out there that are running like some tens of millions of dollars dumped into a facility, and it's a guy that I kind of compare it to like a couple things. One's like, Tiger Woods. Like, this is Tiger Woods right here. I could give Tiger Woods a Walmart set of golf clubs, and I could have brand new TaylorMades. He's going to beat my ass up and down the course, right? But if you give him TaylorMades, he's going to be unstoppable. Or like Kelly Slater could surf a wooden door better than I can surf a wave, right? So some guys they don't know how to do that. Right? They don't have the experience or the intuition or whatever you want to call it. Or like the guys who only know how to grow with HPS or a certain light level, and their temperature, humidity, it's like, I can make the best spaghetti in the world with this, and you ask them to make like lasagna and they just fall apart, right?
Well, a lot of them get stuck too because they think that's the only way,
But through like the testing that he's talking about, and like going on with you and looking at your actual genetics and like the flow of your facility, your environment, you can actually dial in and give you legitimate numbers. Like, look at this right here. It's not that, like, takes the guessing out of it, and it allows you to make what you would see and then just quantify it.
It allows you to make really informed decisions.
Yeah, it's not shotgun spread. You're like a laser then. You're like, no, we need this, this, and this. And like, I'm not going to fuck around with that.
That's initially why I wanted to get so into the agronomy aspect, because
89 NL by the regular NL5.
89 here.
What is this one?
I forgot.
89 NL5 by Melvinetics, and then the Jaime Chiba NL5 he was the one that did the Thunderfuck up out of Alaska. He passed away recently, but we got some seeds through Sinbud. The 89 NL5 from Melvinetics came through Sinbud, and then also so did the ones from Jaime Chiba, So I crossed the 5x5. So that's my number one selection, this purple pheno selection of the NL5 by the NL5 from Jaime Chiba, So unique.
Oh yeah.
It's like, honestly, a lot of these, it reminds me of kind of the core root genetics of what we've been working with. And once you start to really seek, those are fucking sick, bro.
Oh yeah, the cactus on the.
I didn't notice they were cactus.
He's waiting for that the whole time. Bring it in your face.
Make a comment.
Sam Payne job.
Yeah, there's Sam Page.
Fucking, that's fucking cool, huh? It's sick.
Yeah, I got to do it. Hell yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Brandon.
No, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think- I mean,
I I'm super baked right now.
It's
Yeah,
working.
that's that Bodie weed.
No, but the NLs have been really nice because it's really to be able to work that. And so we basically took our selection mail of that, put it by a bunch of kind of hype stuff, whether it be Runs, Lemon Punch, and then stuff by our like Hazy, by Golden, then by the SBSE, Skywalker OG, Tenzins, all that. So threw it all by that, and even put some Helmet Afghani from Michael Fratte's Coastal Seeds Coggy 1, and then also some Afghani 1 by the NL. So we're trying to basically reinvigor the...
Yeah,
you know?
that's what I was just going to ask. Do you notice
Reinvigor
hitting some of these hype strains with some of the old school, kind of closer to landrace type genetics that you're bringing back vigor?
Well, this is like really the NL, I think, is more of a sub-modern hybrid, really. You know, like that, it's like, the work they did back then, those guys, they did something special and just doing their thing, goofing off, trying to make what probably triggered their brain, and triggered their biome, so they're like, anyhow. And from my understanding, what Jorge told me is that Steve out of Seattle was given, out of his grocery store, was every time someone would buy a HPS Light, he'd give him some NL5, So that's kind of like, at least what, Jorge Cervantes told me when we were talking about it, because I was, hey, is this what you remember,
Yeah.
He's all, well, yeah, but like a super dank version, what the fuck, And it was loaded up with seed at that time.
Yeah. How cool is it to spend time with him? Because I remember when we were talking with him, and I'm just like, he's like, I'm going to be in Oregon.
He's like, I'm in
soon."
Oregon.
I'm
Like, you should go see John.
Call him John. Let's set this
Then
up.
they hung out for like a week.
Well,
It's like
like you guys
lived with
were
you for a week.
Well, Sticky came by and I was like, we just started talking and hanging out and vibing, and he was super easy to get on with, super nice, and like, obviously, like, seeing it all, he's a fucking legend. So
100%.
It's funny. It was really cool because he was just like, "Oh man, seems like you got everything I need. I'm gonna cancel a few other meetings. I'm gonna kick." I was like, "You should just stay here with me." He's like, "I can." I was like, "Yeah, bro." And he ended up staying for like almost a week. So.
You guys are still roommates at this point?
Vibing.
Back at home. Every time I FaceTime, they're like, "Yeah, me and Jorge are going to get dinner." I'm like,
I was like,
"Oh,
I
you
was
still
rolling
there?"
them spliffs, and make them some,
Right.
like little poached eggs, something, bro. Like, like straight up, just like, taking care of the,
Nice.
the legends, elders that really did the thing in a way that, that was some balls back then,
For sure.
Like, even what we were doing was kind of eggy, but not really,
Yeah.
Eugene in the late 90s and stuff, you can grow weed there.
Right.
Even though, just like, don't be a fucking idiot,
He was growing back in the day when you had to change your name, right? I mean,
And your whole look, right?
exactly.
Like on the cover of the book, all like, who's that guy? He's on that
Not me.
dude. I'm like, wow, bro. Yeah, no. So anyway, bringing all those back and trying to, we were doing a collab with Coastal Seeds, Michael Fratte's.
Nice.
Coggy 1 is his IG handle. But he's pretty much the one, I think, holding a lot of really unique landrace that are very verified and that are, he's been doing it longer than most people that are left, So working with Afghani 1 from him, and then the he's collected through his old buddies, and then some Helmet Afghani, so threw that by some stuff, and pretty excited about all that, because a lot of the hype things backed in with this, which we're testing now. Right before I came down, I planted, I don't know, like 300 seeds, trying to test some of this new stuff. So
Nice.
So,
What do you got going
tell
on?
you.
What'd you play?
testing a bunch of the NL stuff. NL by Lemon Punch, NL by Runs, NL by Hazy Kush, by SBSE, a few other things. And
With the
then,
gauntlet, huh? We've seen the videos.
so just doing the thing, because it's like, it's really unique to see how many ways you can do the same thing, and that's kind of why I was like really with the
Something new, something old.
with the videos, and like kind of show all these different ways of pollinating that are really you can do it however you want. Actually, doesn't matter. How's it happen in nature? From bees, from moths, from this, from wind, from traction, from animals, some whatever, like everything's happening. So it's like, okay, do the same thing because that's the most natural,
Yeah.
It's been really fun, learning a lot all the time and being around people that at this level now, it's like, that's the mind blowing part right now. Even right here, just listening to him talk, I'm like, this is fucking sick.
Right?
It's like, like really, so that's like, for us, it's a huge blessing, to be able to, not be like, I remember going to American Ag up in Portland, like in, I don't know, I think it was like 98 or something, 99. I was like, have you heard of carbon filters? This is the biggest grocery store in Portland.
Yeah.
Dude, Greg, he's all like, no, what? I said, dude, I fucking saw this thing, and I was like, can you order this for me, I think it was like Mountain Air or something like that was the name of it, He's all, yeah, sure. So he ordered me, it's like, water heater size carbon filter. I took it, And this is back when we were making our centrifugal filter or fan out of, we make a big wooden box and then get a big attic fan, put it on one side, and then put the vent in there, so you make your own, like, inline fan, So imagine hooking that up to a carbon filter and going from, like, week 8 Trinity, like no filter, smelling like 3-4 blocks, like the vibe, when you're like stop at the stop sign, like down the street, and you're like, fuck, I can smell that. Oh, stupid. Going from that to being gone, it was like fucking game changer, That was like a big moment for my mindset. When I got my medical card, that was sick,
But
I stopped having like weird dreams of like getting raided and getting shot and shit.
it's always good.
That was sick. Sick change.
Right. Brandon, you got any exciting projects 2023 that you want to talk about? Or?
Oh yeah, actually, we I think just got all the veg lights, all of the Fohse veg lights. We've got like, I think 256 F1Vs coming.
Hell yeah.
We have I think it's about 12,000 square foot facility. It's going to be all organic soil.
Oklahoma still?
Yep, Oklahoma. It's going to be in Ada, territory cannabis.
Okay.
It's going to be, just we're going to be doing this. We're going to be doing soil data. It's going to be all hooked up through GrowLink, so everything's going to be like completely dialed in. We can dial in fertigation programs. We can dial in.
How are you running your
light
fertigation
schedules.
with soil beds? Are you using GrowLink for your fertigation in soil beds too?
Yep. Yeah. So they'll actually. It goes through a dosatron actually. So like things like the Microbe Plus product, we can run that through our through the lines, or the humate fertilizers we can run.
And are you just using straight drippers?
Yeah, we'll be just doing drippers. We'll have a line that goes from our valve off and on units that'll just be all zip lines everywhere.
So I don't. Here's a question for kind of soil guys like you. A lot of guys now in hydro and stuff like that are crop steering with moisture sensors and their medium and stuff. Are you doing anything to kind of find that balance?
Yeah. So it's, along with not only just SOPs for like things like lighting and VPD and PPF, PPFD, VPD, temperature, RH, meeting these targets on the soil tests. There is what I do is we all run. And all the people that I work with, we're running 1 foot deep beds. And the reason is because I've run in several different scenarios, both 2 foot and 18-inch deep beds. And in my experience, the clone stock root mass doesn't really penetrate deeper than 12 inches. And so the difference between a 12-foot bed, a 12-inch bed and a 24-inch bed is twice the amount of water, twice the amount of top dress nutrients, because you're adding it in per yard of soil to bring it up to nutritional sufficiency and have that balance. So twice the amount of microbes, it's twice the amount of everything from an input standpoint. And doing this type of things, using lights for efficiency reasons, all this is part of cost-effective production, so that way you can decrease the overall price of what you're producing a pound for or a gram for. You should be itemizing all that stuff, and you can do that if you have all this data. And so when you're using that smaller of a space, you can let those things dry down. But there are certain scenarios in organics, like when you're dealing with high EC soils, like modified growing mixes, you don't want too high of a ppm of total soluble salts if you're going to do things like drybacks, right? Because what will happen, and things like sulfur, for instance, if you're really high on sulfur, it'll spike your EC, and then when you go to do a dryback, what you'll see your leaves start to burn, right? And so it's really a balance of making sure that your nutrients are on point, and then making sure that you have the capacity to do that. Because if I look at a test, I'm like, hey, dude, you shouldn't do any drybacks because your sulfur is too high, or you have too high of a total soluble nutrition in your soil, then you want to keep that soil a little bit more moist, because you're going to create less osmotic stress on that plant in that system overall. So that's the kind of data that I can look at and say, hey, I can make do like a determinate action that will, on how this thing will be affected. But I do like if everything's on point, I like to do the drybacks at certain points. So you do those types of things, or you add certain things at a certain point. For instance, if you increase your manganese right during transition, you'll have a faster onset of flower, and you'll also usually finish sooner. And because you need iron as a photosynthetic nutrient, and they're very similar. Oh man, I let that go out.
We have another one.
There's a lot of different nutrients that
You're still standing.
there's a lot of different nutrient interactions that happen when you add water to these minerals, if you're doing hydroponics or if you're adding water into soil, and how things even work from a biological standpoint, but also from a chemistry standpoint. And so there's certain things that you can do that will have an effect from a nutrient standpoint as well. And so just like how we're steering spectrums, right? And we're looking at the timing of how long we want things on, or what our DLI is.
Steering. We gotta
right, just like we're doing things like that.
Photo steering. You heard it first.
Hashtag
We're doing the same thing.
Steer.
We're doing the same thing with nutrient in the soil. And one of those things would be like using a microbial inoculant to solubilize phosphorus, because there's a really interesting kind of relationship that's happening with carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus in all soils, and it's the cycling. So there's a carbon cycle, there's a nitrogen cycle, and a phosphorus cycle, and being able to solubilize the phosphate ion and liberate it from the apatite material in the soil itself will be able to get the adequate amounts that the plant is going to need, because it's one of the most limiting factors because of how highly reactive it is. And so like in high pH situations, 7 above 7 or above, or even 6.5, what'll happen is when that phosphate anion is solubilized, it'll react with calcium, and then in lower pH ranges it'll react with things like zinc, aluminum, manganese, and so those things can get tied up. And so there's certain things that you can do, and that's what I call kind of the biological crop steering. And so doing certain things like adding in a microbial inoculant that'll actually solubilize that and release that will help stimulate the plant, from the nutrient perspective.
And can you pull some of the data from like your plant sap analysis if you're saturating your medium enough? Like if that EC is spiked pretty high compared to what's actually in your soil, couldn't that be
you can see that, but what happens is when you have a higher EC, it creates more osmotic stress, so it's harder for the plant to actually diffuse the nutrients across the cellular membrane, because they're trying to create a nutrient gradient, where there's actually nutrition in the plant, and as they're using it, the plants want to, like if you were to take a glass of of water and put like a Kool-Aid pack in it and watch it slowly disperse and even out. That's what nutrients are doing, and they're doing that across these root membranes. And so as the plant is taking these up, it wants to replace it. So they're trying to create a nutrient gradient. And when your nutrient gradient is higher than the gradient on the inside of that root, then it causes a stress response, and you need to have more water to mitigate that so it can evenly disperse that nutrient like in a greater volume of solution.
So is there a way you monitor moisture at all then in a soil setup like you run?
Yeah, you can. There's different types of soil sensors that you can run. There's a couple of different companies that make soil sensors that for monitoring your soil moisture to like get your fertigation systems to turn on, or some things like that.
Cool.
Sick.
Passing the
It's
joint.
like all this stuff. Like what's really interesting is like, everything it sounds so much like philosophy, and could like way my like mind perceives and registers what the plant needs, and everything in the way that I think to create that equilibrium.
It really
He's talking
is about
about
balance.
He's talking about
dude.
science and the scientific perspective of all of that. So it's really sick that I'm like,
so that's what that means. There's a
I'm
name for it.
I'm like, oh yeah, fuck. I feel like I'm like learning philosophy, because like when I was learning like deeper psychology and philosophy, you start to see why you thought, acted, and perceived things the way you did, and when you understand all those dynamics, you can start to steer it a certain way instead of being stuck in this fucking way, and so you can be like open, really. So all this is creating another layer of awareness,
gives you more power to control.
But you know what's cool too is some of the stuff that you do that you would do intuitively, you get to see the reasoning behind it and how it works, and it's like, oh dude, and so that kind of gives you even more insight, because it's like you've already done something and you know that it works, and and then you get to see it like, oh dude, okay, so, and then you can correlate something and be like, dude, that's you can make the connection to understand like, oh, this is going to do this to this if this is doing this. For sure. And there's so many like nutrient interactions when it comes to things like pH and how much of what is in solution, and like it's so much, it's a lot, dude. It can be a lot, but it's like, it's really interesting if you can like,
if you understand it all, it's amazing, really. So, because it's really like you're saying, it's not like I have to change my way that I'm perceiving the plant. It just expands the intuitional capacity through understanding this information, why, and having that real higher level awareness and analytical breakdown of everything. That intuitional aspect and feeling can just advance and get more deep, and this is
and don't you feel like there's kind of an insurgence and like preserving like the things that we like best, and being able to like dissect all those things, and look at, like you said, if you were looking at varieties from Pakistan that you were able to go and start doing testing on, say, oh dude, look at these, this is why this does this here, look at the native, like if you were to do
just like the winemakers
soil, dude, wouldn't that be crazy? Because like, okay, so maybe they have some rare cannabinoids or some rare terpenes or something that you don't typically see, and you're like, how are these things being expressed? You could essentially go and get soil samples that, oh, look at the nutrient levels, look at the nutrient profiles, and then look at how these things are being cultivated, like what are the temperatures, what are the well,
isn't that what all the wine guys did? They cruised around all over the world, all over Europe, all over the United States, all over South America, like everywhere, like eating the dirt, right? Like they're like, so that's how they did that. That was intuitional, and they ate that shit,
Yeah, and here's the thing. This is the thing. Up front, these things, if you're gonna get the best type of light and be most cost effective and be most efficient, or if you're gonna get, soil and you're gonna get these types of things, it's gonna be more up front, but you're gonna have a way greater ROI. And the reason is because there's like, for instance, did I tell you about? I went out to a place in New Mexico and they were doing huge greenhouses, right? And they were having to throw, after the harvest, they're throwing out all of their cocoa. They have to wash everything, refill that stuff, put everything back, and it's a huge, it's labor. It's really labor intensive. And it's like, if you are doing the soil and it's just permanent right there, it's like you're harvesting, you do your cleanup, do your retop dress, everything, go again. There's a lot less labor. So, and when you're using LEDs versus HPS, right? The cost for electricity, I'm like, I've seen huge reductions, and so that is like, the whole thing is just like, if you're using conventional fertilizers, like some of those nutrient interactions don't work very well, and that's why they're not very efficient. That's why you have to keep feeding over and over. It's like you have to just keep doing it and keep doing it, and it's like other programs don't have to be that like that. In conventional agriculture, they'll go, oh, here, this is what we need to do, put this on here for the cycle, and then we're going to make sure that it gets enough water,
For sure,
and that's
it out.
yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah, be interesting to see. But yeah, more stuff to come. Obviously, we're going to be working with these guys right here a lot this year and years to come, especially with a lot of clients switching to soil. So be looking out for some more content. We got to wrap up this episode because John's trying to blow our brains out with this bong. So awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Sweet.
You.